I don't run into too many people that follow it hardcore like I do.
Yeah, I've been that way for forever.
It's the only sport I watch on TV. The only one.
I watch NFL and golf also.
Okay. Nope. I played sports, but to sit and watch a football game or baseball, I mean, I will, but give me a UFC fight first.
Yeah, I can't watch a baseball game. To me, that's like watching paint dry.
Oh man,
way too much downtime.
We're making enemies.
That's my jam. I like to watch the paint dry.
I'll pass. It's all good. So, who do you think's going to win the heavyweight tomorrow?
Oh, I think John Jones is going to destroy him.
Yeah, be interesting if he doesn't. But that's if I had to place bets, that's where my bet would go.
I think there's going to be probably a 35 pound weight discrepancy. You know, Stipe's always like 230. And Jones was pretty beefy for that last fight, and you know he kind of threw Cyril Gane around like a rag doll in the ring. So
yeah, he did.
Miocic's only chance is if he catches him on the chin. If John Jones gets him to the ground, it's going to be a long night, and he'll get him to the ground.
Oh yeah, eventually. Yeah, I almost felt like Stipe needs to come out swinging hard and gain his respect real quick.
Yep.
Question is,
and I think Chandler's going to be on the downside again tomorrow night. I think Oliveira's a much more well-rounded fighter. Again, if he catches him, that's one thing. If not, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah, my money. I'm rooting for Chandler though.
Oh, I hope he wins. I just if you said I had to place a bet, I'm betting on Oliveira.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. Question is, if Bones wins, will he fight? Who will he fight next? Will he fight Tom?
No, they're talking about him fighting Pereira.
Yes, I saw that as well. But I also
I
heard what Dana White said, though. Dana White said, no, that's not going to happen. He either fights Tom or he doesn't fight at all. Of course, Dana White could change his mind.
I'd like to see that fight. That'd be a great fight.
Hell yeah, it would. That'd be a money fight.
Yeah.
That'd be a bigger fight than this fight for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Tom.
All right, 10 seconds, guys. Compliance and fighting. All right. Welcome to the show, everybody.
We're just going to talk UFC. You can jump, Alex.
Well, we got Christina's already chiming in about Tyson, so
yeah,
that's tonight.
Yep. See what happened.
Well, we do know one thing about Doug. He likes some UFC.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I'm a new friend. Cheers.
Well, what else do we know about Doug? So he's with Informative. He definitely a master of speaking to compliance. We had quite a few conversations on that topic now. And Doug, where do you come from originally?
I grew up in Pennsylvania, went to school in upstate New York, started in the automotive industry in the mid-'80s with UCX, which acquired Reynolds & Reynolds. Did that till I think 96. I've run sales organizations for Oracle and SAP, and then 2 large venture-backed firms. And then the last company I was with was getting acquired by IBM, which was a source code analysis company, security company. And I didn't want to go back to work for another large company. So I started Dealer Safeguards on January 1st, 2009. And 3 years ago, July, we merged with CBC and birthed Informative.
Very nice.
Your resume is quite strong in this topic area.
That just means I'm old.
I don't know about that. We'd call it seasoned. And
seasoned, that's a better word. Yeah.
So talk about the birthing of Informative. What was was really the main drive for Informative out of the gate, and what's it after today?
The main drive was to leverage an informal partnership and make it formal and make it stronger and turn it into a platform that kind of created its own lane. So long-standing history with dealer safeguards of compliance enforcement platform for variable operations. Credit Bureau Connection, CBC, was an integration partner of ours along with some of the other credit companies. And CBC, in my opinion, had the best technology, the best red flags engine, the most accurate kind of compliance piece. And we had talked about informally kind of building what Informative ended up being, which is a platform that stands on its own, optimizes hard pulls and soft pulls, and gives the dealer the ability to reallocate money towards things that'll bring back more return than just paying expensive credit bureau bills just to get credit reports. In many cases, pulling too many credit bureaus. So we formalized that. We added a third leg of the stool, which is a sales enablement platform. It was called Credit Driver, which does some pretty slick stuff with QR codes and solves a problem that I think a lot of dealers struggle with, which is I don't need more leads. I need more qualified leads. I need more good leads, not just more names to go chase. And it has definitely done that. So as a result of that, we put a platform in place 18 months or so ago. We kind of kicked it off in a formal manner, and we've seen tremendous growth, tremendous adoption within our customer base, and the numbers and the results kind of speak for themselves. We're very excited about what we built.
Well, I hear that you all are, in many cases, able to put in a whole platform into the dealership and not cost the dealer any more money. And I think that's huge.
Huh?
Yeah, and I would say 60-70% of the time that happens. And it happens certainly for the dealers, and not dealers in particular, but whoever's responsible for managing credit reports, running credit reports. In many cases, we see abuse of credit reports, shotgun 3 bureaus every time. And there's no reason when I get a 740 to get a 740, a 742, and a 750 and pay whatever I have to pay for that. So what we've done is built a platform to control that process, optimize and balance soft pulls and hard pulls, only do a hard pull when the customer buys. As a result of that, we reduce friction with the customer because everybody else they're out kicking tires on Saturday morning for is going to do that credit app and credit pull right after a test drive. We're not going to do it for our customers till they're ready to buy. So less friction, less compliance burden because I no longer have to do a credit score disclosure notice on every pencil. If I'm only doing the hard pull on sold deals, that's reduced. And it speeds up the process because every dealer that's still doing that credit app and credit hard pull early in the process, right after the test drive, that whole process is skipped. We trigger the pre-qual earlier. When I get back from that test drive or that walk around, I go straight to the desk and everything's there to work the deal with, again, without poking that customer in the eye. And we reallocate that money that was wasted on those hard pulls towards funding other platforms that can drive sales and drive compliance.
That's an answer.
Thank you.
Well, so there's like a comfort level with these credit pools that I think a lot of sales managers and maybe F&I managers have as well. So they want to do the multiple pools and make sure everything's there or whatever. But going the soft pull route, do they lose out on much?
They don't lose out on anything except the compliance header, which is actually not a loss. It's a benefit because I don't have to do it on every pencil again. I've got an obligation for a credit score disclosure notice. I've got an obligation to clear red flags. So the pre-qual and the score are identical to the hard pull. Still have to do a hard pull. Still have to verify the customers who they say they are. Still have to clear the red flags in the OFAC. But that burden is reduced from every pencil to only customers that are ready to go. But the information itself is identical.
Nice.
About how many dealers percentage-wise would you say, I don't know if you can answer this question, are doing that spray and pay? Yeah, let's do it. Spray and play hard pull that you're describing.
I think it's called
more than you would think. Yeah, more than
Really?
you would think. So and that kind of ties directly to in many cases it funds itself. I would say 60 or 70% of the time, the statement that it pays for itself is accurate. And those are the folks that aren't don't really have their hands around credit and are shotgunning 2 or 3 bureaus, especially if you're in a rough market where you go through multiple co-buyers. That adds up pretty quick, right? And there are those that do a great job, and in that case, we don't offset the cost completely, but we put a pretty good credit against, what a couple thousand dealers that paid for us over the last 14 years paid full price for a subscription. There's a significant cost offset against that, even if they did a good job running their credit, because that's all absorbed into the total solution platform.
Well, you've been in we said earlier you're seasoned, and so, and obviously, like, I didn't know your full resume going all the way back to Oracle there. So, you hear company names like that, and compliance and everything along those lines. It's like top of mind. But so, how has it changed? And has it gotten really crazy lately? It seems
it's changed in a very dynamic and wrong direction way, scary way, right? When I started Dealer Safeguards in 2009, it was very specifically to handle managing dead deals, Fair Credit Reporting Act, consent or permissible purpose, to make sure you could prove that you had their consent to run credit. And we can talk about a lawsuit that happened over that. And it's evolved over the years to probably the biggest 2 changes. In June of last year, the feds passed new regulations. Prior to that, they were 4 pages long. June 23rd of 2023, they jumped to 145 pages of regulations. And they specifically call out that dealers must have physical, administrative, and technical processes, policies, platforms in place to safeguard customers' information. So the technical was the one that was mind-numbing for dealers, because most dealers don't have a PhD in computer science on their staff. And when those regs came out, it said you have to do 2 penetration tests a year. You have to have multi-factor authentication for all your vendors. You have to do phishing training. You have to do third-party vendor validation that all your vendors' houses are in order. And half of those words, dealership folks didn't even know what those meant. What's a pen test, right? Nobody knew what that was, right? So that scared everybody. But the other 2, and those are kind of a one and done, right? I do it once a year. I do my pen test. I make sure I've got my people trained. I make sure I check those boxes, and then I do it on an annual basis. The problem with the physical and the administrative is it's every day on every transaction. And the physical is the protecting of the paperwork and the private information. We all know what that leads to. It's a challenge, right? And the administrative is the boxes that I have to check along the way. And when you think about it, the businesses evolve from people walking into the showroom, which still happens, to online credit applications, to digital retailing leads that are coming in, to third-party leads, to scanning our QR codes on a car parked in the mall, which creates a lead. Regardless of where that customer onboards, my compliance obligations are the same. I don't get to skip 2 steps if it's a digital retailing lead, right? And I think that's the piece that's changed the most. And the challenge is there's more going into the top of the funnel than is getting resolved at the bottom of the compliance funnel. We keep getting more and more obligations dropped on our lap, but at the end of the day, as a business, we want to do a couple things. We want to sell cars, take care of our customers, and hopefully take home some money, right? And all these compliance obligations are adding steps, expense, challenges, and unfortunately, many of those are not automated. It's amazing how far we've come as an industry. If you think about, I'll date myself, in the mid 80s. Back then, when I very first started, everything was paper. General ledger was paper. Parts invoice was a 3-part carbon copy. And then we automated inventory so we could get a computer generated stock order. And then we did accounting, and we did CRM, and we did service, and the whole way through digital retailing. And we spent, as an industry, I'm just going to guess, billions of dollars over the last 20 years to automate processes in the dealership that need to be automated, right? And none of them are life-changing. We're talking about making sure my debits and credits balance, make sure if I sell a part, I mark it as sold so my stock order is accurate next month or next week. What we're talking about in the showroom is probably the most complex thing we do: sell a car, customer, car, salesperson, trade-in, bank, payments, 145 pages of regulations, turnover, temptation, policy evaporation from training. And there's nothing to automate that. And the ironic thing is, dealers make capital expense investments in key machines because they can't get a salesperson to do the simple task of please bring the key back and put it where you got it. Yet up until very recently, there's been no investment in controlling the chaos that goes on in the showroom, which frankly is why we're having the traction and success that we do, because the way the total solution's built, it puts guardrails up based on your policies and based on state and federal regulations. It says from the time I say nice to meet you to the time I say congratulations, here's my keys, these are the boxes and the steps that have to be checked, both from a physical and administrative perspective, protect the paperwork, protect the privacy, and make sure I don't skip steps. And whether you have one person or 100 people in the showroom, it behaves the same way every time. Doesn't get sick, doesn't have bad days, doesn't take a day off.
I want to hear more about this lawsuit you were referencing.
Well, there's all kinds of press. You can go back and Google compliance violations for auto dealers, and you'll see headlines from getting creative with credit applications to you name it, right? But here in Dallas, and it's one of our customers now, but they weren't at the time. And this is the stuff that doesn't make it into the headlines. Attorney calls a dealer. Hey, I represent, Susie Q, who now lives in New Orleans, but 2.5 years ago, she was in your dealership and you ran her credit and ruined her perfect credit. And she never said you could do that. So I'd like to see her signature consent. I'll call you back in a couple days. So the dealer goes on the witch hunt for the dead deal jacket, because you never get that phone call on somebody that bought a car, obviously, right? You get on the people that did. And whether they got that signature or not didn't matter, because they couldn't find it. And when the attorney called back, the dealer told him that. And the attorney said, well, Mr. Dealer, now not only are you guilty of violating FCRA, but you violated your privacy statement, which is a legally binding contract with your customer that assures them you're going to protect and retain and save their information. And you can't even put your hands on it. And we don't think Susie Q is an isolated case. So we're going to file a lawsuit, lots of discovery, class action, unfair deceptive acts and practices. Fast forward to the punchline. He wrote a check for $172,000 to settle with that attorney over what started out as one dead deal jacket. And I don't know if you've seen the billboards, but they're popping up. If you had your credit declined at a dealership, call this number. If you had a problem with your car, call this number. All those attorneys are looking for is one crack to get in. They can turn it over to discovery and blow it up into a class action lawsuit. Now, with the total solution, because I have every piece of paper collected or created digitally, there's no paper, verified for fraud, go the whole way through the process, I now have transparency into everything that's going on. And I basically can't get to the finish line without that stuff being in that digital deal jacket. So that phone call is a 5-second phone call with our platform, because the gate won't go up and let them run credit until they fulfill the credit app with the signature, the ID, the privacy statement, the clearing of the red flag. So again, one person, 100 people in the showroom, doesn't make a difference. The system's in place to make sure that the dealer's protected and the customer's information is protected.
And I assume it's all digital too.
Yeah. I mean, we don't add anything to the process. Most dealers are photocopying or swiping the driver's license into their CRM system. We do two things that add to that factor. Number one, we think about salespeople, they collect and create paperwork, and then the desk creates paperwork. So how do I lock that down? Well, everything I collect, we capture with a mobile application. So it's not just a driver's license, pay stub, water bill, insurance card, anything I'm going to collect. The mobile app has identifiers on it that identify that document. I snap it with a phone, nothing stored on the device, which is a direct violation of your privacy statement. We also run that driver's license through a fraud detection tool and immediately notify the stakeholders if we find one. We can do the same thing, sending that request remotely. Somebody just filled out an online credit application. They're coming in Monday for an appointment. I can send them a link that says, hey, I'd like to get your driver's license before Monday. Please click on the secure link and follow the instructions. If they're a fraudster, they're probably not going to do that. Or you can make the statement as bold as you want. Please send your license so we can run it through our fraud verification tool. There's not a fraudster on the planet that's going to give you that driver's license back. Then when we get to the credit app, that's a digital tool. We get to their new and used car pack. That's created, signed on an iPad. There's no paperwork in the showroom. And because of that, I now have visibility into everything. And where I know where I am in the process, because I've got the steps and the paperwork in there, I can control that process and stop that. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's unintentional misbehavior, right? I can stop that before it happens, rather than what most dealers have had to deal with over the last 30 years, which is trying to get the toothpaste back in the tube after the fact. There's nothing more frustrating to dealers than investing the time and money to have some compliance company come in and train my staff, and then have some compliance company come in and do the report card and give me back my results, and it's a C-, and the results say 6 months ago, these 12 employees created these 30 violations. Too late at that point. Nothing I can do about it, right? Other than hope it doesn't go any further. Well, what we effectively do is stop that misbehavior before it happens.
Makes
Wow.
sense.
Yeah.
And we were talking before. You had mentioned the number of fake IDs that y'all had caught. I believe it was this year. What was that number?
The last year was 5,300.
Okay.
We're looking at roughly, I would say, almost a 55% increase over that in 2024. Now, part of that's because we have more customers, but there is no doubt it's going in the wrong direction. The bad guys are getting really creative with the fake IDs. They're really good. And they have two benefits that we don't have as a business. They have unlimited time and unlimited budget. And all they do is run up and down the highway, seeing which dealer they can victimize. And that's one of the biggest things I see that's definitely going the wrong direction today.
Wow.
Yeah. You would think with all these new government IDs and stuff like that, it'd be a lot harder to fake them.
Well, it is. And the problem is, there's not a problem. The issue is there's multiple ways to skin a cat, right? So there's a bunch of tools that can look at synthetic fraud, do the red flags. There's different ways to analyze a driver's license and apply machine learning and some tools to see how valid it is, right? Some are more accurate than others. Some are much faster than others. And we did a bake-off years ago of 4 or 5 vendors, and we did it on 3 criteria: how fast, how accurate, and how much, right? So the how fast was all over the map. Instantaneous, 1 or 2 seconds to literally 60, 75 seconds, which on a Saturday to a salesperson might as well be 60 to 75 minutes, right? Nobody wants to wait around for that. It just seems like eternity. How accurate was all over the map too. Some looked at, the font size, the location, the color, the rounded edges of the driver's license, and some results were better than others. And the biggest challenge dealers have is if it's a standalone product. Again, back to kind of the Hershey Kisses story, which we'll get to eventually. But the most important thing is I have to do it every time. And the problem with standalone tools is it's really easy to check a license up front when there's 3 people walking around my showroom. If I've got a device at the receptionist or wherever it is, and it's Saturday, and I've got 10 guys getting ready to go out on test drives with 10 customers, and I'm 6th in line waiting, and I look back and my customers putting their keys in their pocket, packing up their stuff, I'm skipping that step, right? I'm going to go back and make sure I don't lose my deal. And guess what? The bad guys aren't coming in when there's 2 people in the showroom. They're coming in nights, weekends, half hour before you close when you're busy. And that's when those shortcuts get taken. Well, with our platform, again, there are no underrounds. You're not getting any further until that's in there. And it's up front every time on every customer.
I like it.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. But, so all the stories are out there. We hear about the lawsuits. We know the government is coming after us. So why are dealers still reluctant to get on this train?
I think it depends on the dealer. I think, let's start with the broadest net. Nobody likes change, right?
Well,
I've done it the way forever. This is the way I want to do it. Second reason, I've never heard about it in my 20 group. They're not going to enforce anything. None of my buddies have ever been clipped by a lawsuit or the FTC or the Attorney General, or whatever, which is not true, right? And then there's the absentee owner versus kind of the owner that's there and really has his hands on the business, because a lot of times the folks that can't say yes and can only say no are the ones that this gets presented to. And they don't want to be controlled. They don't want to have guardrails put up around them because they like to run loose, right? So our customers in general, there's a clear profile of our customers. Our clients are the Cub Scouts, not the Cowboys. They're the ones that care. They have a reputation. They have a brand. They want to do things right. They understand that even when it was not, funded by the offset of the hard pulls, it's a rounding error, our subscription to their business, right? So the most successful implementations we've done, the most successful sales cycles we've done are where we engage with a decision maker, because there's 3 people this really matters to: dealer, GM/managing partner, and controller/CFO. GSM, desk manager, BDC, it's an inconvenience, and you know what? If I get fined, I'll just go to work for the dealer across the street. It's not my money. If you get to one of those people, they get it pretty quick. They understand what the ramifications are. And when we come in and do the kickoff meeting, they simply stand up and introduce us, and they'll end the introduction with something like, if you don't like it, we're going to miss you, but I'm committed to this. It's not going away. That makes the implementation better. It makes it much, much more successful right out of the gate. And I think that, the proof's in the pudding. Back to 2009, we retained 95% of our customer base. I would ask any dealer, go back through your vendors, and I promise you can count on one hand the number of vendors that you've had consistently since 2009. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, probably not too many.
Yeah.
Yeah. EMS. And that's starting to become a changing one. Yeah. So we've been, got Hershey's Kisses and the title of this show and the email we sent out notifying everyone the show was coming on. What's up with the Hershey Kisses?
It's just a story that I think would stick in your brain. So I've already talked about, the evolution of our industry, paper to automating everything, lots of money spent, the key machine, right? So you think about Hershey Kisses, right? Everyone's identical. Everyone's got the same wrapper, the same piece of paper sticking off the top, the same weight, the same taste. If I were to go try and I'm going to go start my own company, compete with Hershey Kisses, I'm going to let your sales force go off and I'm going to give them the recipe. I'm going to give them the aluminum foil. I'm going to give them the paper, and I'm going to give them the ingredients. That bag would be a train wreck. Your perfectionist would probably do the best. You'd have somebody who's going to eat one out every 4 Hershey's Kisses, somebody who's going to completely ignore it. And the reason that's so successful is because they've got a manufacturing process and a piece of technology that makes it the same every time. It is so simple to do that with compliance in the showroom in a way we have dealers that sell 50 cars a month. We probably have half a dozen to a dozen dealers that sell north of 1,000 cars a month at one location. And it works equally effectively for both. This isn't just a problem for the big guys. It scales based on your staff, right? So to the key machine, we spent money on that. How can we not put a piece of technology in that makes sure that I'm not playing for a $400 key fob. I'm playing for keeps with compliance. I mean, it can be really expensive.
Yeah. Speaking of that expense, what kind of things have you seen here? I mean, you mentioned the dealer who had to fork out was $172,000. That could seem like chump change with some of these, I assume.
Yeah, there's one that made automotive news 3 years ago. I'm not going to mention any names, but the feds put out
they've been brought up on this show a few times, by the way.
Well, there's more than one. We may be talking about a different one, but the headline in an article was feds are looking to hold dealers individually liable for compliance violations. 90 days after that headline came out, the first dealer got publicly crucified. They had 4 stores, and the feds went after the dealer principal personally for their staff getting jicky with credit apps, changing income, changing employment, right? Judgment came down, $7 million judgment against the dealer, and had to cease doing business in the 4 locations. Another one just happened in April of this year in Olathe, Kansas. A Chrysler store, headlines, fraud factory. Same thing, getting creative and taking editorial rights with credit applications, packing payments, etc. So there's a couple pieces to that. One is what the fines could be. Secondly is some attorney's going to figure out they can probably turn that into a class action lawsuit. That's what's happening in Olathe. And third, when that gets in the headlines, it also has a collateral damage to your brand, right? I mean, it's not like it's not going to go unseen. So, there's multiple bad things that can happen off of that. $7 million gets my attention. If somebody misbehaved and it cost me $7 million, I would not be happy.
I hope not.
Yeah, that hurts. So, yeah. So let's go back to the fraud case a little bit here. So it's not just fake IDs and showing up when you're busy just before closing. What else are these people doing?
Well, it's one piece of it's the fake IDs. Second piece of it is trying to complete the transaction remotely, which is handling the paperwork, filling out the credit app, and then the the coup de grace is, hey, by the way, I'm going to be working tomorrow, so I don't want you to come to my house. I want you to deliver to my office. And they're standing in front of a building somewhere that not even be their office, right? So again, they've got unlimited time, unlimited budget, and they're very creative. So, what I tell customers is first and foremost is always ask what's wrong with this picture if it's not like a normal transaction, and use word facts. Like on a driver's license. Hey, we've kind of put a new system, and it's a little bit buggy. Reading driver's license. Can I get one or two forms of government ID? And one of a couple things going to happen. They're going to hand them to you. They're going to have an excuse, or count backwards from 10 and see how fast it takes them to run out of your showroom. Right? If they're a fraudster, they're probably going to have a hard time doing that. The remote delivery piece is a big one. Some of the things we do to try and catch all those is obviously the detection on the ID is the first piece. The second piece is when we do that hard pull, we're going beyond red flags. We're doing the synthetic fraud check, which checks manufactured IDs, right? Take your social, your address, and I create a new ID. And the third piece, through that QR code platform that we have, whenever a consumer scans that QR code, whether it's parked at a mall, you can put them on the cars on your lot on Sunday, and then I want to talk to a salesperson, climb over to the gate and scan it, whatever the case is. When they capture that, we ask for their consent and do the pre-qual and start a folder. But we also reach out to the carrier and verify that that device is owned by that customer, right? Mm-hmm. So every possible place we can figure out if there's something disingenuous going on, we're trying to apply technology to it to make sure that we've got as many of those areas covered as we can.
Wow.
So QR codes, that's
Alex's favorite.
Yeah, it's become my favorite, I will say. I like them a lot more now, Jeff. But Jeff was way...
It's a running joke. Yeah, it's a running joke with Dealer Refresh.
Well, Jeff was way ahead of the time, like almost a decade.
Wow.
That wasn't me. I didn't post that.
Well, you were into them, let's say.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate. And they definitely became much more valuable here recently.
Yes.
So
we take an interesting approach to it because they're ubiquitous. You can get your menu that way. If you're watching TV and your subscription to some monthly subscription, you scan the QR code and it renews. So people are used to using them. So what we've done is built a platform where the QR code is scanned. Within that QR code, we have the source. We have the tool that goes out and automatically collects consent for the pre-qual. And then we also have the device ID validation. And when we reach out for that device ID, we capture the information from the consumer and make sure we populate that, or make sure it matches the driver's license, et cetera. The use cases that I've seen are pretty creative. So obviously I mentioned park a car at the mall. Today, if you have a salesperson sitting there, you and I both know what's happened. They're at Starbucks or talking to the person to the booth next to them selling perfume or cologne or whatever, and they don't get all the leads, right? So anywhere you can put a car, anywhere that you want to advertise, the QR code goes. I have a customer who plays golf at the golf club I belong to. They sponsored our member guest. They had cars parked on the golf course with QR codes in the window. They found out immediately whether the check they wrote to sponsor that was worth it. Or the other example is I put them on the cars on the lot. I'm a 6-day-a-week store. And on Sunday, the person who hates to talk to salespeople climbs over the fence and starts looking at cars. Whenever they capture that QR code, we get the source, get the consent, hopefully, get the fraud verification, get their information, start a digital deal jacket, and do all that, in a very non-invasive way that, again, precludes them to do the hard pull till they buy a car. What we're hearing from our customers are up to 20 to 30% uptick in conversion rates, because we're getting not just more leads, but more qualified leads. They can also be embedded on your website, on your inventory. They can be on the back of the backstop at a Little League field if you wanted it to. Anywhere you want to put a QR code for any type of advertising, we get better accuracy on the sourcing. We get better accuracy on the customer, and we get more customers further down the funnel because we're not asking for that social and hard pull right up front.
I'm curious, what information does that QR are you able to pull from that client's device?
Name, address, city, state, zip, and birthday, and whether that is their device.
Okay.
It beats the hell of an Auto Trader lead.
Yeah.
So can you pair it up with other technologies? So like Informative's doing the pre-call and making sure that the customer is who they say they are. But then there could be another WIFM, what's in it for me, for the consumer, if
Yeah.
yeah, if it was paired up with a, say, a digital retailing tool, or something where it's like, get the payment on this car.
Mhm.
Could it work together with something else?
Yeah, it will return. You have a switch you can turn on where the customer will actually get their score in a payment range or a payment estimate. Some dealers want to
Hmm.
show that, other dealers don't want to show it. But again, that can be embedded in your digital retailing site, embedded in your online inventory. They go wherever they need to go with a link to the consent and the sourcing and everything else attached to it. And then you can manage that information that you get back however you need to fulfill that WIFM, which is a new 4-letter acronym I never heard of before. So I like it.
It's a fiver. There's 2 eyes in there. It messes you up.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
five.
What's
Yeah,
in it for me? Yep.
yeah.
With them.
Yeah. So obviously, one of the best ways dealers can protect themselves today is to utilize Informative. And I do want to touch base on this again. We talked about at the beginning, and then there are some people who come in after the 1:30 hour because they might have been in a meeting or something at a time. And I think it's
Sure.
very important for anyone listening to understand that Informative is a protection platform, and it can be, um, for a lot of cases, it can be something that actually saves on some of the credit pulling costs or
Yes.
matches it. So, like, typically what you're finding, what you were saying earlier, Doug, was that Informative isn't like the whole price, isn't what you're eating up front in a lot of cases. You're able to save them some money in other areas.
Yeah, it's. I guess the punchline will be a better allocation of dead money, right? So if your store is not doing a bang up job of managing and controlling credit reports, you're wasting money. And there have been some ungodly credit bureau invoices that I've seen. Uh, you couldn't even imagine some of the prices based on the volume of the store. So again, if we put in an
By the way,
optimization,
I'll say it. You told me there was one dealer, one store is paying $80,000 a month in credit
three
bureaus.
dealerships,
Or
three
three. Yeah.
dealerships side by side, 400 cars a month between the 3 stores. The 3-month average invoices that they sent us for those 3 stores was $80,000 a month.
Wow. Wow.
They shake the fan. It's in a rough credit market. They run more, co-buyer pools than most stores, but they're running 3 bureaus on every single person who walks into that store. Plus, they're paying a lot of money for some ancillary fees above and beyond what I would consider to be industry norm. They've been with a vendor, it looks like, for a long time, and they have not paid attention to that bill.
The vendor buys a lot
That's
of
a big
lunches,
bill.
right?
It's a ridiculous bill. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be the poster child for how to reallocate dead money, right? I mean, we take that offset, fund the compliance enforcement platform, fund the sales enablement platform, give them a flat rate with unlimited pre-quals and enough hard pulls for their buyers and co-buyer attach rate plus some padding, and drop money to their bottom line on top of that. I mean, I don't know many folks that wouldn't want to hear about that value prop. I'm going to help you sell cars faster, eliminate the friction, speed up the process, eliminate my compliance burden. And depending on how good or bad you do on your current credit controls, either fund it for free or offset a significant piece of the expense and savings.
There you go. So support from Informative, how is that? And can a dealer just call up anytime and say, you know what, I'm dealing with this situation. It seems a little fishy to me. What do you think? Or
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so support is obviously support of our platform, right? Which is a password resets. I can't do something. The second level support is kind of best practices advice. And we always answer that question with the first phrase of, we're not attorneys, right? So this is not legal advice, but based on our experience, here's a great example. One of our big customers the very first time they got a fraud detection notice on a driver's license, it fires off alerts to everybody. And the managing partner called me. What do we do? What do we do? And I said, well, tell me about the deal. And it was a young female from Oklahoma. She's in Dallas, fake ID, flagged as fake ID. So, well, tell me about the deal. Well, she doesn't care what the payment is. She doesn't care. She just wants the car. Okay, well, I think you have three options. You could tell her, hey, based on what we have, we can't help you, and let her walk out the door and victimize somebody else. You could say, hey, we're the one I already talked about. We're struggling with this new driver's license tool, and it's not reading your license. You have one or the two forms of government ID, and count backwards from 10 and see how fast she runs out of the dealership. Or you can call the police. They chose 3. Police and a detective showed up. He called me about 3 hours later. I was at dinner, and he said, it's amazing. He said they walked in. She had a deer in the headlights look. They walked around a lot, questioned her, put her in the back seat of the car. The detective came back in and said, she's going to jail. She committed multiple crimes, fraud, and identity theft, etc. And I just got to ask you, I've been doing this for about 12 years, and we're always chasing the breadcrumbs after the fact. How did you catch this person up front? Which was great for us, obviously, because that alone justified, the subscription he was paying. One car justified the subscription he was paying. So that's not legal advice. Here's a couple options I would do. And we do that all the time. It starts with implementation. If we walk into a brand new store and their privacy statement is 13 years old and they haven't updated to the new privacy statement, we're going to let them know about that. Or if they're general, I won't say egregious, but black and white things that they should be doing that they're not, we're going to bring those up. If it's anything that's kind of gray, we're going to say, go to your state association, go to your council for it. But we do try and help with those kinds of things.
We got a great piece of advice from a past guest on the show, and this was when the safeguards rules and everything were really starting to heat up. So it's, back early 23, I think we were doing this. His advice was, if you are making an investment and putting the time into compliance, even if you're not fully there to the government standards, you can at least show them that you're making an effort to be there. And usually in that case, the government might be a little more lenient on you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So a lot of folks don't know this, but judges have sentencing guidelines where they can adjust the decision based on diligence or effort, right? So I've got 2 dealers. One is the cowboy. They have no technology. Their safeguards manual was signed 6 years ago, and they just kind of let it roll. And the other is the Boy Scout that has a piece of technology, has training, has everything. If they both have the same problem, the guy with the technology is going to come out way, way better because, to your point, it's very easy for me to separate a bad Apple employee from a bad Orchard dealership. Hey, we've invested in technology. We trained our people. This is our platform stated in our policies. That's a rogue employee that went outside of what we told them to do and didn't use the technology that we invested in to do this. They stand a much better chance than somebody who just said, I never heard about it in my 20 group, and I guess I'm first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't be the one who says, I guess I'm first. Yeah. So that's another. I'm going to take that one from you. So I give you the whiff'em. I'll take that one from you. And
Yeah.
I got to take another one from you, too. I like the poking the customer in the eye.
Yeah. Well, look, nobody likes their credit run. I mean, even if they understand that if I got to run 5 times in a week, it's going to ding me the same. But it's just the process of going through that. And when everybody's fighting to reduce the time from nice to meet you to here you go, to sit down and interview the customer every pencil or have them fill out a credit app and hope that the desk can read it when they go to run credit versus skipping that whole step. That's such a better experience for the customer. It's a better experience for the dealer because I've eliminated all those compliance obligations. And a lot of dealers are coming back saying we're starting to hear feedback from our customers that they like this process better than the 3 stores that they were at before ours on Saturday.
Well, just having a process that's apparent to the customer can go a long way.
Well, it'd go a long way with the dealer too, right? If you look at the dealers that are the most successful sales-wise, they have a process. They have a recipe for success, right? And all this platform, this framework does is help them enforce that process. So when we're herding cats at the busiest times, there are no shortcuts. And it makes a huge difference.
I can tell you, I've had this experience. It was a few years ago now, but I did everything online with a particular dealership, and then drove into the store to try and finish things up. And I got there and said, "Yeah, that's the internet department. We do things differently here in the showroom." Yeah.
That's the best.
One of the most eye-opening, talking about doing things different, one of the most eye-opening experiences for me, and it's fresh in everybody's mind on how much we've relied on technology, but yet we've completely missed the boat on this topic up until now, is 6 months ago when CDK got hacked. I happened to have my car in a service department for a warranty repair. Go there all the time. It's a CDK customer. It's a big store. Normally I go in, I walk up, my invoice is there, no charge, sign it, hand me my keys, and I'm on my way. It took me 1 hour to get my car from that dealership. Not only could they not find the paperwork, they couldn't find my car because CDK was down, right? And take that a step backwards. I'm going to bet you that based on that, I wouldn't even want to guess the amount of money that was left on the table when we had to go back to putting the manual flat rate stickers on the back of the hard copy of the work order on the parts and rely on people. There's money that was left on the table for that whole period of time. And you think about that, and that's recent. That's an eye opener on, again, we should be using technology everywhere that we can in the dealership, especially with the stakes we're playing for in variable operations.
Okay, what's the first thing they tell you when you get into investments? Have a broad portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't just stick all your eggs in one basket anymore.
Yeah. My very first customer, which was our pilot in 2009, when he actually started paying for it, I said, I need to know, because I'm trying to build a company here. Why did you buy this? He said, it's real simple. My partnership agreement says I'm responsible for the first $500,000 in liabilities, lawsuits, litigation related to compliance, and it doesn't come out of my retained earnings. It comes out of my personal checking account. I'm not willing to bet $500,000 that my sales team can do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I bet 99% of dealer principals out there would probably say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Terminology, I keep hearing, I think I read an article in Ward's Auto, synthetic fraudsters. What Can you dive into that a little bit more and maybe just give us an explanation to what that means when you hear synthetic fraudsters or fraudsters?
Yeah, they're basically creating a synthetic ID. They're taking bits and pieces of information over a period of time and establishing a credit profile for a fictitious person, your social, your address, somebody else's name, etc. And then once they get that done, they strike fast and frequent because it's going to catch up to them, and they just try and catch what catch can. It's much more sophisticated than just a fake driver's license.
Okay. Yeah, I kept seeing that term, and I'm like, what exactly does that mean? So thank you for that.
So the red flags compares things on the credit app to things on the credit report. An address discrepancy. The social doesn't match the birth date. There's something's not right here. Synthetic goes to things that aren't on the credit report and looks at other activities and other events that aren't necessarily in their credit file.
Okay. Good to know.
Do they vote?
If they get through, they do. Yeah. If they get a voter registrations card, they do.
Leave that one there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Doug, if anyone were to reach out to Informative and say, hey, I'm interested in learning more, obviously they should go click the ad on dealerrefresh.com and head over there that way. But what are some other ways they can get in touch with y'all?
We've got a click here to schedule a meeting on our website. We've got a sales phone number published on our website and a sales inbox for inbound emails requesting activity. So there's multiple ways to reach us.
Great.
Beautiful. I see you also have a free compliance quiz.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that covers not many, some of the topics we covered today. It's kind of more of a self-assessment quiz.
Okay.
Smart. Yep. Well, Doug, is there anything else that you would like to cover?
If I were to tie this all up with one statement, I would say if you look at us kind of as Switzerland, right? We don't really care who trained you up front. You have an obligation to do that. We don't care who does your report cards after the fact. You have an obligation to check, self-inspect yourself and make sure your staff's behaving as you state you are in your policies. In between those 2 days, those two things, every day you got to wake up and run your business. And the timing's probably perfect, right? The big Mike Tyson fight is tonight. Many, many years ago, he made a statement that applies directly to this. Everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face, right? Guess what? We've trained, we get the report cards, and every day we wake up and the doors open and stuff happens, right? And we're relying on people and opinions and good days and bad days. There's a piece of technology can lock that down every single day and make sure that you're going to get your money's worth for what you trained, and those report cards are going to come back instead of C-, they're going to come back as A's because you're not going to be able to have your staff step out of bounds. So another thing you can justify an investment for. If I have an obligation to train and inspect and I pay for that, sure it'd be nice if I got a report card that showed I'm making progress against it and do what I'm supposed to do on a consistent basis.
Perfect.
Makes total sense. All right. Well, I know you've got to go grab your wife from the airport.
Yeah.
So don't sprint too hard.
No, I don't want a speeding ticket. She can wait. I'll be there as soon as I get there. Yeah.
Okay. But we thank you today for coming on and giving us a lot of insight here.
Well, thank you for your information. Enjoyed the conversation and happy to talk about it anytime. You guys have a great weekend. Appreciate it again.
Thank you much.
You too.
All right. Thanks.
Have a good weekend.
You too.